Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff, presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and we are back here once again, and that only means one thing. It's time for some college football, and we'll get you ready as we kick off Week 0 in the FCS. As we said in the open, it is technically Week 0 in the FCS, but there is still a lot of action to get to, and here's a look at what we'll discuss in this episode. We'll kick off the season by unveiling our 2017 preseason FCS All-American team, and what good is any season kickoff show without talking rankings, and we'll do just that with our preseason FCS Top 25, and we'll also give you an early look at the playoff and bowl game predictions in our FCS bracketology segment. But before we get into any of all of that, let's take a look at some of the key storylines in the FCS as we go into our 4-minute offense. There are 17 new head coaches taking over programs this year in the FCS, so there was a lot of moving and shaking going on this offseason in the football championship subdivision. The most changes took place in the Colonial Athletic Association, where 3 coaching changes were made. The most notable was former Richmond head coach Danny Rocco stepping down as Spiders head coach to take the job with the Delaware Blue Hens, which allowed former Chattanooga Mocs head coach Russ Huesman the opportunity to move up I-95 to take over at Richmond. And I'm always a fan of promoting from within, and that's exactly what Morgan State did with head coach Fred Ferrier by removing the interim coaching tag and making him the head coach. Presbyterian did the same thing with Tommy Spangler, Eastern Washington with Aaron Best, Charleston Southern with Mark Tucker, and Idaho State with Rob Fennessy taking the head coaching job coming from being an assistant. Howard Bison new head man Mike London won an FCS title with Richmond back in 2008 and is coming over from nearby Maryland, where he was the Terrapins associate head coach and defensive line coach. Both Abilene Christian and Elon hired former Division II standout head coaches in Adam Durrell and Kirk Signetti, respectively, while Chattanooga went to the Division III ranks to grab John Carroll's head coach Tom Arth, who is a fantastic developer of quarterbacks and a brilliant offensive mind. So needless to say, there will be a lot of interest in these new hires as the season kicks off this week. This will be year 3 of the Air Force Reserve Celebration Bowl, which pits the champions of the MEAC and SWAC against one another in Atlanta, Georgia. The first 2 games have been highly entertaining and competitive, which most importantly has been a great showcase for both the FCS and HBCU football alike. If the first 2 games are of any indication, this year's edition shouldn't be any different. This bowl game kicks off bowl season once again Saturday, December 16th at noon Eastern Time on ABC. This past April, we saw 15 FCS players selected in the NFL draft, which was more than the players selected in the Big 12, Conference USA, the Mountain West Conference, the MAC, and Sun Belt Conference. It just speaks to the level of talent, recruitment, and development that's taking place at the FCS level. This year looks to be an impressive group of prospects with guys like Sam Houston State's P.J. Hall, Tennessee State's Ebenezer Ogundeko, and Fordham's Chase Edmonds, just to name a few. Can the Dukes repeat? That's going to be the constant question as James Madison enters the season. Second-year head coach Mike Houston is coming off a 14-1 record and winning the AFCA, FCS, and Colonial Athletic Association Coach of the Year award. And this year's squad looks equally as strong as they return key contributors on both sides of the ball. Now, things are definitely different when you're the hunted and not the hunter, so we'll see how the Dukes respond with everyone else gunning for that number 1 spot.
Well, the FCS creates so many opportunities for young men. And it's, I think, and you look in our league, it's really the best. It's the best combination of winning football, but also outstanding student athletes. That's really the true model here. And a lot of the FCS programs feel the same way. And, we're blessed to be where we're at here at Lehigh, and everybody else in this league feels the same way. But the FCS, you'll see a lot of people that aren't coming necessarily to the NFL, but what they are is they're becoming leaders of industry, whatever they do when they graduate. And that's really the most important piece of going to college and playing college football is to getting that degree. And our guys really excel in that response.
There are many players across the FCS landscape that are worthy of being on this list, but only a few can be considered All-American. So without further ado, it's time to unveil our 2017 preseason FCS All-American team, and we'll start on the offensive side of the ball with the quarterback position. There was so much good quarterback play last year in the FCS that it's tough to only narrow this list down to just 3 guys. Gage Gubrew was a sophomore starter at Eastern Washington over who everyone thought was going to be an incumbent, Jordan West, and went on to throw for over 5,100 yards, 48 touchdowns, completing 67% of his passes in the process. But when you're talking about top-notch quarterback play in the FCS, you have to start with the reigning Walter Payton Award winner in Jeremiah Briscoe out of Sam Houston State. The 6'3", 225-pound Bearcat lit up the scoreboard last season to the tune of 57 touchdowns, which was an FCS record, to only 10 interceptions for over 4,600 yards. Briscoe saved one of his best performances in the Battle of the Piney Woods against hated rival Stephen F. Austin, where he went 25 of 33 for 438 yards and 7 touchdowns. That would be one of 2 performances where he threw 7 TDs. The other was against Central Arkansas. Grambling State's quarterback Devontae Kincaid is fresh off a Celebration Bowl victory and a Black College National Championship with the Grambling State Tigers. The senior signal caller was highly impressive in his first season as a Tiger, completing 63% of his passes for over 3,000 yards with 31 touchdowns to only 9 interceptions. Like Gage Gubrew, Kincaid will be breaking in a new set of receivers, but shouldn't see a drop-off in production because he's that talented. Speaking as a former college running back myself, I wish I had the talent of these 6 tailbacks and 3 fullbacks that have graced our list. The lead dog on this team plays right across river from here in the Bronx at Fordham University, and his name is Chase Edmonds. There is nothing that Edmonds can't do on a football field. The 5'9", 200-pound senior running back has averaged over 1,600 yards rushing per season and is within striking distance of the all-time FCS rushing record for a career and could possibly top the FBS all-time rushing record as well. I was at that Monmouth game last year where Edmonds ran for over 200 yards, 208 yards to be exact, on 25 carries, scoring 4 rushing touchdowns. Now, looking at the rest of our running back All-Americans, A.J. Hines of Duquesne won the Jerry Rice Award last season, which is given to the nation's top freshman in the FCS. Hines ran wild over opposing defenses to the tune of 1,296 yards, averaging 5.4 yards a carry and scoring 13 rushing touchdowns. Cal Poly's Joe Prothero headlines our fullback All-Americans. He plays the B-back position in the Mustangs' triple option attack and ran for over 1,300 yards and scored 13 rushing touchdowns last season. Butler's fullback Devontae Lane led his team in rushing last season, finishing with over 700 yards on the ground. Wide receivers come in many different sizes, shapes, speed, and skill set. The one common attribute that all these guys on our preseason All-American team possess is their game-breaking ability. This is a strong group of wide receivers on our list, and one that I would gladly take the battle against any FBS secondary in the country. You see a pair of teammates here in Lehigh's Troy Pelletier and Gatlin Casey, as both guys are tremendous receivers as well as dynamic talents on special teams, and the same can be said for the Sam Houston State Bearcat duo of Jedediah Lewis and Nathan Stewart, who shined last season as a freshman. Justin Watson out of Penn will garner a lot of attention this season and could find himself playing in a major postseason All-Star game as a result. I got the chance to see Cameron Lewis of St. Francis play live last year in the playoff game versus Villanova, and the 6'4", 195-pounder was very impressive. Lewis finished 2016 with nearly 1,500 yards receiving and 11 touchdowns, and one would easily expect the junior wideout to be the primary target once again this year, as the Red Flash will be breaking in a new quarterback. There are 3 elite talents at tight end we have here in Dallas Goddard of South Dakota State, Ross Dwelly of San Diego, and Andrew Vollard of Weber State. Goddard is one heck of an athlete and definitely knows what to do with the ball in his hands. He's already drawn a lot of comparisons to current Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce. He fits the mold of today's tight end and will have a lot of NFL scouts flocking to Brookings, South Dakota to watch him play. The all-purpose All-Americans on our list are equally as impressive as the tight ends. Princeton's John Lovett is the do-everything player for the Tigers. Last season, Lovett threw for 10 touchdown passes to only 2 interceptions, ran for 411 yards, and scored an eye-popping 20 rushing touchdowns. That's 2-0. And he also hauled in 26 receptions for 235 yards and a score. Not bad for a quarterback. Martez Carter of Grambling will be this year's Tariq Cohen as far as must-see TV is concerned. Carter, at 5'8", 175, is a ball of explosiveness and game-breaking ability. The Grambling State Tiger led the team in rushing last season with 891 yards and 10 touchdowns, averaging 7.7 yards a carry. And Carter also finished 4th on the team in receiving with 376 yards and 4 touchdowns, and led the team in kickoff return yardage with 443, bringing one back to the house for 6. Along the offensive line in the FCS, you'll find a lot of athleticism and versatility, and these 15 preseason FCS All-Americans that have made our list exemplify both of those traits to the T. Consistency is the name of the game, and all of these offensive linemen exemplify that. Brandon Parker out of North Carolina A&T is a pro prospect that has been a starter since his freshman season out there for the Aggies. You also look at a couple of Lehigh Mountain Hawks and Zach Duffy and Brandon Short. Both guys are returning for their 5th season and should lead that offensive front being once more productive on that side of the ball. Timon Paris of Stony Brook and Justin Lee of Jacksonville State, our first-team All-Americans, are 2 outstanding offensive linemen who do a great job on both ends of offense. Rushing the passer is a skill that only a very few possess. Stopping the run is about attitude and want to, and those who possess the ability to do both at a high level are the ones that find themselves on our preseason All-American team. Colgate's Pat Afriye headlines our list of defensive linemen. The senior edge rusher was voted ECAC FCS Defensive Player of the Year after finishing 2016 with 10 sacks and 21 TFLs, which led the Patriot League and was enough to place him 4th nationally in both categories. Sully Leach out of Nichols burst onto the scene as a true freshman last season to help lead the Colonels to one of its better seasons in the last few years, earning first-team All-Southland Conference honors after posting 13 TFLs and 9.5 sacks. Staying in the Pelican State up the road at Southern University, Aaron Tiller put together a fantastic 2016 campaign for the Jaguars. The 6'1", 256-pound edge rusher finished with 60 tackles, 17.5 TFLs, and 9 sacks, showing a great ability to turn the corner, flatten, and accelerate to the quarterback. Tiller also forced 4 fumbles last season. Over the last few seasons, we've seen some outstanding linebacker play in the FCS, and as you will see, some of these guys on this list have been just that throughout the course of their entire career. And when we're talking about production, we're talking about linebackers like Garrett Dolan of Houston Baptist, who has been a starter since stepping foot on campus, just like Delaware's Charles Bell, who should cap off a fantastic career with the Blue Hens. Brett Taylor is one of the best linebackers in Western Illinois history and has been a starter as well since his freshman season. Darius Leonard of South Carolina State plays with the right amount of aggressiveness that you want to see from the position. He's been a stalwart for the Bulldogs defense for 3 years running and finished last season as the team leader in tackles with 124 and TFLs with 14.5. Javion Butler out of Georgetown is one of the more underrated players in college football. The 6'2", 205-pound junior linebacker has elite-level football IQ and a knack for making a critical play at the most important time. He's not underrated over here at the FCS Kickoff because I've been on the broadcast for a lot of Georgetown games, and number 34 is always around the ball making plays on both ends of defense. Can you take the ball away and can you score are the biggest questions I look to answer when I'm scouting defensive backs. The guys that have made our preseason FCS All-American team can not only do that, but they do it pretty frequently. Frequently finding himself around the football was Danny Johnson of Southern, 5'10", 185, the senior corner. Picked off 7 passes last season, which led the FCS. You're talking about 2 outstanding teammates in Rob Roll, the free safety, and Malik Reeves, the corner for Villanova. Both guys do a great job of attacking the ball. And it's a shame that Deion Harris of North Dakota suffered a season-ending injury in fall camp. This guy at 6'3", 180 was primed to be a pro prospect, giving the North Dakota Fighting Hawks one potent secondary. And they're still going to be good, but hopefully he can return next season to full strength. But when you're talking about guys that are around the football constantly, look no further than North Dakota State's defensive back Trey Dempsey. He finished last year with 53 total tackles, 4.5 TFLs, and was able to break up 13 passes in the process, also picking off 6 passes. This is a guy that can play free safety, he can play strong, he can play corner, he can play in the slot, he can play on the outside, giving North Dakota State's defensive coordinator a lot of flexibility in how they utilize his skill sets. Finally, we wrap up our preseason FCS All-American team by taking a look at what is the most important and vastly underrated facet of the game, the special teams. Ian Berryman of Western Carolina is a two-time All-American, made the All-American team as a freshman in last season as well, after averaging 44.9 yards a punt, forcing 11 fair catches and downing 18 inside the 20-yard line. And also had 19 punts over 50-plus yards. That's definitely getting it done in the third aspect of the game. Checking out our kickoff and punt return preseason All-Americans, you look at Shane Simpson out of Towson, 5'9", 185 pounds, is an outstanding kickoff returnman, averaging 26.9 yards a return last year for 915 yards, bringing one back to the house for a touchdown. Let's take a quick commercial break and come back with more of the FCS Kickoff.
Are you ready?
The Connecticut School of Broadcasting can help you reach the next level in the amazing world of broadcast and entertainment media.
I've mentored several interns here at the Covino and Rich Show at SiriusXM, and the ones from CSB always stand out to me. They have a knowledge of the equipment, knowledge of editing, what it's like to be in a studio, and that always eliminates a huge learning curve.
Their professional studios give students a hands-on, learn-by-doing approach using equipment used in actual radio stations and TV studios. Visit our website at gocsb.com or call 1-800-TV-RADIO. Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Start today.
For me, I think the biggest thing that football taught me was how to overcome adversity.
At some point in your life, you're going to have some tough times.
You have to have that next play mentality.
That cohesiveness and that working together, that's really something special that you can't get in a lot of other areas.
When you practice that and you live that in other phases of your life, it becomes second nature because all you know how to do is fight.
It's not an easy game. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
You start to appreciate the smaller contributions that people make. You don't just look at the big one because you knew it took 6 or 7 other guys who are unsung.
And you can't take shortcuts and be successful.
Doing what they do to make it possible for the guy getting the press clippings or whatever it might be.
In this game, whether it's as a coach or a player.
So I would certainly say that you definitely got a very quick lesson in how to overcome adversity playing football.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and no preview or kickoff show will be complete without the top 25 list. So without further ado, let's unveil our preseason FCS top 25, and we'll start with some of the teams that just missed the cut. And there are some tremendous talented teams on this list. You look at a team like North Carolina Central, who was in the Celebration Bowl last season and lost a close game to Grambling State. Nichols, I think, is going to be an outstanding football team moving forward. Coach Rebo has done a great job with that program. And keep an eye on Southeastern Louisiana. They're getting a lot of transfers into that program, and they're going to turn that thing around and get right back to where they were a couple of seasons ago. Now looking at 18 through 25, Eastern Washington has done a great job in replenishing talent. They're going to have to do so on the outside as they lose Cooper Kupp, Kendrick Bourne, and a ton of tremendous playmakers on the flanks. I think Northern Iowa is one of those teams that's going to be flying under the radar, as well as Montana. And keep an eye on Wagner. I like their quarterback, Alec Thompson, and I think he's going to be a big-time playmaker for the Seahawks this season. Looking at 10 through 17, I love the Citadel Bulldogs and that option attack. They're going to be an outstanding football team in the SoCon. Central Arkansas secondary is top notch, and they're going to give a lot of teams problems in the Southland. Look at Youngstown State, Wofford, and also UT Martin are solid teams on both sides of the ball. And don't sleep on Grambling State and Fordham. Grambling has one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and Fordham, as we talked about earlier, has one of the best running backs in all of college football. Looking at 2 through 9, and a lot of people will focus on number 7 Tennessee State, but I'll tell you like this, the Tigers are a legit threat in the FCS this season. They have an outstanding transfer quarterback in Treon Harris, tremendous talent returning on the flanks with Patrick Smith leading the way, and their defense is also led by Ebenezer Ogundeko, the outstanding pass rusher. So again, Tennessee State is strong on both sides of the ball, so keep an eye on the Tigers in the OVC. And we look at South Dakota State, we talk about their tight end Dallas Goddard, we talk about their wide receiver Jake Winicky, but Taryn Christian could have made our All-American team as well. If he's able to put together back-to-back seasons like he did last year, this Jackrabbit team could find themselves in Frisco, Texas. And if any preseason FCS top 25 does not include James Madison at number 1, just throw that list away. The Dukes returned a lot of their key players, offensively led by Brian Shore, the outstanding quarterback. This guy stepped in last year as a starter for the first time over the course of a full season and threw for over 3,000 yards, completing 73% of his passes, 29 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. This was a guy that was very efficient with the football, didn't put the ball in harm's way, and also rushed for nearly 600 yards on the ground with 10 rushing touchdowns. So when you have that type of talent returning on a team that still should be very strong defensively, especially on the outside with Andrew Ankra leading the way, and yes, the schedule will be tougher this year, and yes, it's different when you're the hunted and not the hunter. So we'll see how James Madison will respond to being the top dog in the FCS. But my thoughts are that this is a team that could find themselves back in Frisco, Texas come January. The best part about covering the FCS is that we know the season ends in a true national champion. I know it's August and a lot can happen between now and January, but it's still fun to project forward and take a stab at what we think the FCS playoff field will look like in our preseason FCS playoff bracketology. Yes, I know it's early. I know it's August 24th, but here's my crack at the top 8 of the bracket in the FCS playoffs. Again, still very early to look, but it's always fun to do. Tennessee State and Villanova, I think, are two vastly underrated teams in the country. Both teams are strong on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Tennessee State has outstanding quarterback play now with Treon Harris, throwing to a great set of wide receivers. Citadel will find themselves in the mix because of what they do offensively and how they're able to complement that by playing excellent defense. Yes, they lose a guy in D. Delaney. He's transferred out, going to the University of Miami, but this is still a very good football team that is still strong on offense, running that triple option, and you can't have a bracket without having James Madison and North Dakota State number 1 and number 2. I'm pretty sure North Dakota State is chomping at the bit to get a rematch against the Dukes somewhere along the lines of the season, whether it's in the playoffs or in the championship game. And here's a look at my thoughts on the rest of the playoff field. Again, it's August 24th, so it's really early, but I do like Kennesaw State. I think they're going to finally break through and make the FCS playoffs. Samford is a team that could start out on the other side of the bracket but find themselves in the Final Four because they play really good offensive football. They throw the football all over the field. Wofford is another option team that you have to worry about. Central Arkansas, I think this is a sleeper team in the FCS. No one is talking about the Bears. I think the Bears have built a strong roster, very good quarterback play, and they're well coached. And Montana is another team that's flying under the radar, as well as New Hampshire. You saw they wasn't in my top 25, but you can't count out a team that has found a way to make the playoffs the last 12 seasons or so. So New Hampshire will find themselves in the bracket. Somehow, some way, they'll get in. All right, it's prediction time, and there are 5 games on the FCS schedule this weekend. We'll start in Montgomery, Alabama, where the official FCS kickoff takes place between the Chattanooga Mocs and the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. The Tom Arth era begins in Chattanooga as he inherits a really good quarterback in Alejandro Benefield. The question for me will be, how good are the Mocs along both sides of the line of scrimmage? That'll be the biggest question and test they'll face in this one, because we know Jacksonville State, they are excellent in that capacity. The Gamecocks come into the season having to replace stellar quarterback Eli Jenkins, but will have no problem turning around and handing the ball off to sensational tailback Rock Thomas. I think that's how they'll come away victorious in this one against the Mocs. Portland State draws a tough opening matchup against BYU. The Cougars are one of the sleeper teams in the FBS in my opinion, and Portland State has lost a lot of key contributors from last year's team, more in particular in the secondary with Xavier Coleman now moving on to the NFL. Don't look for the FCS upset in this one from the Vikes. East Coast meets West Coast as Colgate travels out to Cal Poly for a cross-country matchup. This will be the most physical game of the weekend as both teams will bring their running game and tough front seven. What will be the difference is if Colgate is able to match early defensive stops with long sustained drives of their own. Both teams will be breaking in new quarterbacks, and in my opinion, that slightly favors Colgate. They also have the much better defense, and it'll be close, but the Raiders will slowly pull away late. It's the inaugural Jake Gaither Classic that pits Texas Southern and Florida A&M against one another. Tigers improved by leaps and bounds last season under new head coach Mike Haywood. Year 2 in his program, he has to replace the quarterback Avarian Hurts, but quarterback Jay Kristoff figures to be a much better passer, which will open up this entire offense. Defensively, they're stout in the secondary, and they'll need that as FAMU has a talented passer themselves in Ryan Stanley. Credit goes to head coach Alex Wood for turning around this program as they're coming off an improved season. I think they hit the ground running in this one and knock off the Tigers, and keep an eye on the Rattlers as they could be a dark horse candidate to make it to the Celebration Bowl. And finally, a game that features all sorts of storylines as Richmond takes on Sam Houston State. This new Richmond staff is very familiar with the Bearcats. Head coach Russ Huesman was at Chattanooga last year and played Sam Houston State in the playoffs and gave them all they could handle. The question is whether or not this Spiders defensive personnel can match up to the speed and quickness of Sam Houston State. What I do know is that they will bring pressure, and they will bring it often. The Bearcats own the best offense in the Southland and arguably in the FCS. How well can they stop the run is what I'll be keeping a watchful eye on. Now, this will have a playoff feel to it, and I like Richmond long term, but not this week. I'm taking the Bearcats. So that's it for this episode. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. And if you miss any one of our FCS Kickoff preview shows, you can find them archived on our website at footballgameplan.com/FCS Kickoff. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes to the FCS Opening Drive podcast.